Tony Khan reportedly has a heated discussion with a top AEW star. Plus, Tony Khan also gives some details to fans who are maybe thinking of leaving Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor early this weekend. A reminder why they shouldn't do that. Plus, a interim Ring of Honor Women's Championship match has been announced for that very same show. Tony Khan has also given an update when it comes to television for Ring of Honor going forward. Plus, some not so good news when it comes to the AEW Rampage ratings. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Tuesday. Let's get into it. There's plenty of AEW news stories to get into, and let's start off talking about Tony Khan's reportedly heated discussion with MJF. Now, this is a bit of an eye-opener, and it must be said, it's a fascinating story, and I think it's going to be one of these stories that more is going to come out of it as time goes on. Now, AEW President, CEO, General Manager, and Head of Creative Tony Khan reportedly had a heated discussion with MJF over the weekend. We noted last week how MJF spoke with Ariel Helwani to discuss interest from WWE, his AEW contract status, Cody Rhodes' departure, his relationship with WWE executive Bruce Pritchard, and other topics. Now, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select is reporting that Khan took issue with the interview being set up without notifying AEW's PR team. The interview led to a conversation between Khan and MJF over the weekend, which reportedly left both men frustrated. It was noted that MJF's contract status has also caused the young top AEW star to be frustrated as of late. AEW sources said they did not think there would have been an issue with the subject matter of the interview if it was set up with AEW's PR team first. MJF confirmed during the interview that his AEW contract expires on January 1st, 2024, and admitted that he's not afraid to stir the pot until then. Quote, "So when you're as talented, as over, as much of a draw as me, if I want to, I can bite off Tony Khan's fingers. He knows where his bread is buttered. And if that offends somebody in the locker room, which I know it does, oh well, cry about it. Get more over than me. Oh wait, that's right, you can't, because I'm literally the best talker in the business and one of the best wrestlers in the history of the business, bow to bow." So he also talked about the interest from WWE and why he can't legally talk about that, all that kind of stuff. Now, it's a fascinating story, and more has come out about it because Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter has spoke that the issues that arose between Khan and MJF are, quote, now said to be settled. Meltzer noted that although the story is true, quote, there was no fight or physical altercation between MJF and Khan. Not that anybody said there was. This is the thing, with what Meltzer is saying there, and this is the problem. This is the issue when it comes to Dave Meltzer and his reporting when it pertains to AEW. First of all, his recent reports when it comes to WWE, they've just not been good. They've just not been accurate. He's got a spotty record when it comes to WWE recently. When it comes to AEW as well, there is an element of him defending Tony Khan. There's an element of him not being objective. There is bias involved. I'm a fan. I'm not a journalist. I just say what I like and what I don't like, and that sometimes that's in WWE, sometimes that's in AEW, sometimes that's in Impact, wherever. I just call it out as I see it. But when does Dave Meltzer do that for WWE? He doesn't. When you hear Vince McMahon had an argument with someone, Mustafa Ali, perfect example. Do you hear Dave Meltzer come out and say there was no fight or physical altercation, the matter is now settled? No, he doesn't say that. And that's where I just see that go, there was no fight or physical altercation, but nobody said there was. And when you hear a heated discussion, nobody thinks, oh, they were punching each other, right? It was like Will Smith hitting Chris Rock. No, nobody thought that. It's just such a weird thing to say. Now, my views on this story in general, I can see both sides. I can understand why MJF might be frustrated with his contract status. I felt like when he did that interview, that's an interview, and this is someone who's a football fan as well in the UK, that when people do those kind of interviews, they do them because they're not happy for whatever reason and they want to get what they want. MJF obviously, clearly wants a better contract than what he has. And he is saying there is interest from WWE. Of course there's interest in keeping him in AEW. He knows that how much money he thinks he's worth. He knows how valuable he is. His contract's coming up in 2024 and he's saying, look, AEW, there's interest in me it's in your best interest to lock me down. Even though in that interview he said, I won't sign anything until my contract expires and all that kind of stuff. I want to get a bidding war going. He wants to get a bidding war going now. That's why he did the interview. And some people could say, oh, it's in character, it's a work. The thing is with MJF is you never know. And watching that interview, I felt like he's telling the truth. I really do. And I know MJF is the ultimate worker and character and all that kind of stuff. But I believe it. I believe that he's like, oh, people are interested. And I know how much money I'm worth. And I know how valuable I am. And, you know, I believe that he's probably not happy with the money he's making, especially when he sees other people in that company on a lot of money. MJF also has to realize that he's young. This is his first contract with AEW, and the time to negotiate is when it comes up. That's how pro wrestling works. Now, of course, Tony Khan can decide to do that early, and maybe that's what MJF is kind of angling for. He's going, rather than wait then, I want you to reward me now. The issue from Tony Khan's perspective of that is if he does that, he sets a precedent, and other people might say the same thing. I want to be rewarded now. I don't want to wait till my contract comes up, etc., etc. From Tony Khan's perspective, I can absolutely understand why he would be frustrated. Not so much about him talking about his contract, not so much talking about how much money he wants to make, not so much talking about WWE's interest. I'm sure Tony Khan loves it that MJF is getting interest from WWE because that validates that he was right to sign MJF in the first place. That validates Tony Khan knowing that what I'm doing is working to the extent of WWE is one, paying attention, but two, they realize that that guy is money and I was right this whole time. So I don't really think Tony Khan cares about that. But as someone that has reached out to get interviews done, there's a process you have to follow to book interviews with people that are under contract to companies. You reach out to their PR department. That's how it works. Whenever you want to get an interview with WWE, whenever you want to get an interview with AEW, when you want to get an interview with Impact, whatever pro wrestling company it is, you reach out to their PR team. You reach out to the communications department, the PR department, and say, I'd like to have an interview with one of your talents. Now, sometimes some companies are very open and they'll say, which talent do you want to interview? And you can go, I want to interview MJF. And they'll go, okay. Some companies, you say, I want to interview someone. They'll go, okay, we'll send you someone. And some people just don't get back to you. But that's how the interview process works. And I think that Tony Khan will be frustrated of, you know, what's the point of the PR department if you're just going to make interviews on your own, especially interviews that are newsworthy. And I don't think it's a case of, oh, they would have wanted an AEW PR person on the phone because they'd have stopped Ariel Helwani asking certain questions, or they would have stopped MJF asking certain questions, like the report says. I don't think they would have really cared that much. They know what MJF's like, and they know what Ariel Helwani's like. He's not afraid to ask questions either. So I don't think they would have particularly cared by that. I think it's just a case of Tony Khan's perspective, and maybe there is a little bit of, oh, I've been undermined somewhat here. But I think it's just a thing of, look, there are rules. There are rules you have to follow, and there are channels you have to use. And if you don't follow them, that sets a precedent for everyone else. And I can't do that. And also, Tony Khan's the boss. He has to be seen to be putting his foot down. He has to be seen to pulling people back in when it comes to that. Now, MJF might say it doesn't matter. If you weren't upset with the content of the interview, why does it matter if there's someone on the call or not? But I guess Tony Khan's perspective would be because that's their job. They're representative. They're representing the company, and that's just what we do, and that's just the process. Whilst you're under contract to AEW, you have to follow the rules that AEW sets, and there aren't a ton. If it's WWE, that certainly wouldn't happen. And in WWE, to be honest, if the same thing happened, if it was, say, I don't know, Randy Orton, maybe not Orton, it might be slightly different, but most people, to be honest, if you've got Bianca Belair, if she just randomly did an interview with someone and started talking about her contract status and it didn't go through the WWE's PR team, they would be furious, absolutely furious, because they're way stricter on the message than AEW is. But they would be furious. And I think any company would be unhappy with that, because that's the role of the PR department. So I can understand that. Now, reportedly, the issue is now over and quashed. The thing is that people can decide to say, okay, let's shake hands and leave it and move on. But people remember those things. I'm sure Tony Khan will remember that. And I'm certainly sure MJF will remember that. And that's just another seed, right? That's another seed that some people might say, look, Cody Rhodes left AEW because of money, and he went to WWE. MJF, why can't he do the same? And if I am WWE right now also, I'm thinking, right, I make sure I get this Cody Rhodes thing right. I make sure that we show that just because you were in AEW, just because you were a founding member of AEW, doesn't mean you won't get pushed in WWE or doesn't mean you won't be successful. Because if Cody Rhodes comes in and say he wins the WWE Championship, there 100% will be people in AEW that will say, actually, you know what? WWE is an option. And previously it might not have been because it might be like, oh, if you're an AEW person, they're never going to want you in WWE. No, WWE is interested in quite a few people. And if they're going to treat them properly, which we don't know that they are, historically they haven't. WCW guys is a great example. But if Cody Rhodes is successful, then who knows? Maybe MJF might go to WWE. So it could be a nothing story. It could be the beginning of a really big story. And I'm sure it's something we'll hear more about. Look, next time there is a media scrum, whatever they call it, or next time there's a conference call, next time MJF's in an interview, I wonder if he'll be asked about it. Because I certainly would. Tony Khan's on Busted Open Radio every single week. Maybe he'll get asked about it then. I don't know. Now, Tony Khan's also been promoting Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor, which of course takes place on Friday. And obviously there's lots of events going on WrestleMania weekend, where it's Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, WWE, you name it, there's a lot going on. Now, there might be some people that might leave Supercard of Honor early to go to another event during WrestleMania weekend, but Tony Khan has told people on Strong Style Live not to do so. He said, quote, "I will tell you this. I've heard some talk because there are so many events that night. I've heard a few people talking that like they might leave early to go to another show. At least that's what some people are saying. Don't do that. It would be a big mistake to leave before the show is over. And again, I can't control what other people scheduled or other events that night, but I really hope people will come. There's going to be, how long have we been waiting to see the Briscoes versus FTR, Lethal versus Moriarty, Gresham versus Bandito, Zayn versus Swerve, and so much more to be announced. We'll talk about that in a second. I promise it's going to be a great night, and a lot of the card is still to come. I'm still putting some agreements in place and some of those matches, but don't leave before it's over because that would be a regret you'll never forget." So he's teasing something at the end of the show. Some people might say, oh, he's begging people to stay at the show. But frankly, think about it. If they've bought a ticket, at that point, he's already got their money. So why is he trying to convince them to stay? He's trying to convince them to stay, ultimately, because he's got something big planned. And it would appear that there is going to be some kind of big, unexpected, unannounced signing or appearance at the end of the show. There are several people who that could be. Now, obviously, we've heard that Jonathan Gresham has or is going to sign an AEW contract. I don't think that's going to be the big unannounced surprise because he's wrestling. He's wrestling against Bandito, so that doesn't make any sense for him to be the big surprise unless it's a case of him going, oh, and by the way, these two championships, they're coming to AEW because I've signed with AEW. That might happen. I think the most likely things rather would be is that Samoa Joe returns to Ring of Honor and announces he is signed with AEW/Ring of Honor. That's a possibility. Or the other one is Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli. Those two, I think, are the most likely people. Of course, Cesaro can appear anywhere he wants because he's a free agent. His contract expired. He wasn't released. Samoa Joe was released and his 90 days are up, so he can also appear anywhere he wants. Those, for me, are the two most likely names. Those names, I think, are going to appear in AEW anyway. They've both got huge ties with Ring of Honor as well. Maybe they'll both show up. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Kings of Wrestling. Maybe after, say, FTR beat the Briscoes, and I think they will beat the Briscoes, maybe the Kings of Wrestling show up then. Maybe Cesaro and Chris Hero show up, right? There is so much that they could do, so I think we're going to see a lot of surprises at Supercard of Honor, I really do. Speaking of which, a interim women's championship match has been announced. New Ring of Honor owner Tony Khan took to Twitter yesterday evening to announce Mercedes Martinez versus Willow Nightingale, with the winner being crowned the interim Ring of Honor women's champion. The winner of Martinez versus Nightingale will face Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Deonna Purrazzo at a later date to determine the undisputed champion. Of course, Purrazzo is actually unavailable for Supercard of Honor because she's booked for Impact Wrestling's Multiverse of Matches event that same night at WrestleCon. She's going to be defending her Ring of Honor Women's World Championship and her AAA Reina de Reinas title in another Champ challenge at Multiverse of Matches. Now, what could happen, who knows, what could happen is that whoever wins this one, Willow or Mercedes, maybe they show up at Multiverse of Matches. That could happen, I suppose. Maybe that's what they have agreed. I think some people were thinking that maybe Deonna Purrazzo would show up at this event, but they're going in a different direction. Ultimately, I think that eventually Deonna Purrazzo is going to drop the Ring of Honor Women's Championship because she's contracted to Impact Wrestling, and I think that's how they're going to go with it. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if they do an angle where essentially it's Willow or Mercedes win the Interim Championship. They then answer the Champ Challenge. They say, I'm going to go after the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship. I won the Interim one earlier tonight, and then boom, they go with that. Because, of course, the Briscoes are wrestling at both events as well. So who's to say that either Willow or Mercedes don't do that too? I think that might be the direction that they go in. And when it comes to Ring of Honor Television, Tony Khan has addressed the future of Ring of Honor Television going forward. He said, after talking about the callbacks to classic Ring of Honor that he's had on AEW TV, he took a moment to assure fans that weekly Ring of Honor television will return at some point. He said, quote, I've tried to pen a couple of love letters to Ring of Honor fans just in the last few weeks with great matches on Dynamite that were throwbacks to some of the best Ring of Honor matches, like Bryan Danielson versus Christopher Daniels, looking back to the era of Honor Begins, of course, and then having Jay Lethal versus Adam Cole on Dynamite this past week. I think that was another awesome match and goes back to that great rivalry, and of course he has something to do with how Jay Lethal ended up with that shaved head. So I really have so much respect for Ring of Honor. I'm a fan of Ring of Honor, and now it's a great privilege to be the owner of Ring of Honor. So I really am grateful for all those fans. I'm one of you Ring of Honor fans. I think that's why it's going to be very good for the future of the company. I don't know exactly where the Ring of Honor weekly TV show will live, but I promise I'm going to bring back the weekly Ring of Honor TV show when I can. I don't know how and when, but I am very grateful to the media partnership with Warner Media. So we don't know. Ultimately, we don't know. I don't know if it's going to be streaming. I don't know if it's going to be on a Warner Media station. Ultimately, he doesn't know. I wouldn't be shocked, ultimately, if it wasn't on a Warner Media station, honestly, because it's a separate company, and maybe that's the direction that Khan might go. I think it deserves more than, say, just a YouTube situation. But ultimately, it depends what Ring of Honor under Tony Khan looks like. If it's a developmental territory, then I guess it goes on YouTube. If it's more than that, if it's a separate company that bigger AEW stars go to and spend 6 months in or a year in when they're not going to be on AEW television, it belongs on cable or something like that. And I think ultimately that's probably what Tony Khan is looking for. I think he's shopping it around and saying to people, look what I've done with Dynamite on TNT, then TBS and Rampage. Talk about Rampage in a second. I can do that with Ring of Honor as well. And I think that's what he's going to do there. Speaking of Rampage, not so good news when it comes to the Rampage viewership and key demo rating. Friday's taped AEW Rampage drew an average of 425,000 viewers on TNT, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, this is up 6.78% from the previous week's taped episode, which drew 398,000 viewers for that later time slot. Rampage drew a 0.14 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic, which is also up from the prior week, which drew a 0.13, but it's still not great. That's the problem. It still isn't good. Friday's Rampage ranked 32nd for the night in the cable top 150, which is up from the previous week's 57. It also ranked 78th in terms of viewership, which is up from the previous week's 95 ranking. However, Friday's Rampage drew the lowest audience, lowest key demo audience, and the lowest key demo rating in the history of the show for the normal time slot airings, which again, ain't great. Now, the NCAA tournament game between Miami and Iowa State on TBS topped the night on the cable top 150, and maybe that's why. Maybe some people might say, well, that's because of the competition. But also, frankly, it's because that there isn't really a big reason to tune in. That's ultimately the problem with Rampage, isn't it? I tuned in, I liked it, but if you watched it, if you didn't watch it, you didn't miss out on anything. There's no continuation really of Dynamite, and there's no... It just isn't. And I think moving it to a better time slot, same time slot as Dynamite, an 8 till 10 show, making it live. I understand that probably they can't do that on a Friday, but maybe on a Saturday 8 till 10 or something like that. Or I think that's what they have to do, because otherwise it feels very nothing, and that's the problem ultimately at the moment with AEW Rampage. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.